Hello once again, and welcome back to another episode of Movie Deputy Reviews, where we do in-depth interrogations of movies past and present, and of course the future ones as well, as I try to keep up with the new ones coming out. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, is one of the new movies that's opening this weekend. I do apologize about not having this up yesterday for you. I know I normally don't do a show on Sunday, but I wanted to make up for not getting this show up yesterday. And this movie that we're talking about today is one of the most highly anticipated movies, at least of this weekend, because the trailers just really led us up to something. And unfortunately, the movie doesn't quite deliver what the trailers promise. And movies like that are so frustrating on so many different levels for so many different reasons, and I'm sure you can relate. And don't worry, no spoilers. You'll never get spoilers here at Movie Deputy, so you don't have to worry about that ever, because I hate them with a passion. Stories like this truly are upsetting, though. I want to say I am giving this movie a guilty rating just because the content throughout, with language, some of the scenes, things like that, is just not appropriate for the younger viewers, and so I just want people to come prepared for that. This one is aimed at a much more mature audience, and so this is not going to be your friendly, like, typical date movie or something like that, but those coming into a story such as this should come, and you may be wondering what movie but I'm getting to that. But this one is, honestly, this would have been done better on a theatrical stage. This is one of those ones that maybe would have done better in that type of theater versus the cinema type of theater. And I'm going to explain that here in just a moment. But the fact that who did this movie did it the way that they did it, I don't know, it just almost was like fingernails on a chalkboard. And the thing is, I wasn't the only one upset. When I went to see this, I got a few comments and stuff. And then, I went to actually go see it again because I was like, okay, did I just miss something entirely in this one? Was I really just that out of tune? And oh boy, no. There was a big group when I saw it for the second time that we stood around chatting for probably 5-10 minutes after the movie. And there was this one lady, and she was miffed. She was miffed at what this was. And the movie that we're actually talking about today is Here. Now, have you not heard of that one? Well, you might not recognize it by the title, but it is the new movie with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. And you may think those names sound familiar. Well, they're the two main characters in Forrest Gump. So, and the fact that this movie was written and directed by the same person who did Forrest Gump. And what we get is, with what is promised to us in the trailer, sorry, I just had to pause there for a second, because like I said, I will not give spoilers. The trailers show us that the couple, and obviously we know it's not Forrest and Jenny from Forrest Gump, but it's just kind of played out that, okay, this is going to be the love story they never got to have. That's at least what was promised to us in the trailers, and it's very, very deceiving because that is not the movie that we get at all. It is very important to touch on something that this movie almost was feeling like it almost got Lucy'd. Now, I don't know if I've ever used that term before on the podcast, but I've used that term in real life, and I want to explain what that term is. In the movie Lucy that came out years ago, or not like totally years ago, but it's been like 5 or 6 years, maybe 8 years ago. But the very beginning of that movie, the whole beginning part of that movie feels like you're watching Jack Hanna's like Wild America. You're like watching this big like nature scene, and it's supposed to be a sci-fi movie, and you're like, what? And honestly, this one kind of does the same thing. It takes us back to the Jurassic period, and we're seeing dinosaurs, and we see the asteroid hit the planet, and we're watching this whole thing transform into the land that we see today. And it's also very important to say that why I bring this up, that this would have been done better in like a live theater type setting. This entire movie, except for just a few just random scenes throughout, is shot from a singular camera angle in a singular room. Now, why is that important? It's everything it's just the view of this living room, and we get to see out the window and we get to see across the street. And that is the entirety of the view of this movie. Everything that happens, all the stories and stuff that are told are from this one camera angle. And it begins to make more sense of why the movie is called Here, is because the movie is not actually focused on this couple. It is not focused on Ricky or Richard and his wife. It's not, they're the focus of the movie, but at the same time, they're not the focus of the movie. The focus of the movie is actually the home and the home across the street, which actually ties into some stuff with Benjamin Franklin and things like that. But it has to do more with the stories that are taking place in that home and the stories of the families and how one thing leads to another. And it's all, there's literally some stuff about like the origin of the lazy boy chair and stuff about Benjamin Franklin. And it teases and makes fun of things from the founding fathers, almost making light of history itself. It's almost in a disrespectful way. At least that's how I took it on that. And it's a disconnect. And then you see these families and stuff moving through, and you see these multiple families that are going through this home. And you may be wondering why I keep focusing on that. It's because the characters that were promised, like I said, that's not the core. It is the core story, but it's not the core story. It focuses more on this family than on other families. And it exposes a lot of family drama, a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily see in some other movies, of some of the harder things that have to do with family. And I will acknowledge and I will give it credit for that. But at the same time, it couldn't help itself. It had to insert some very progressive ideas and very progressive type pieces to the story that were absolutely unnecessary for a story such as this. And when it's all said and done, it's like you're almost, when the screen goes black, when it's at the end, and like I said, no spoilers, you're almost wondering, it's like, okay, is there something else? Is that the way that they're really going to bring this to a close? It's like you're left wanting something extra that this just leaves you. That's it. That's the kind of the whole thing. It leaves you wanting, but not necessarily in the good way. And when it all is said and done, you go back and you rewatch the trailers and stuff for this, and you rewatch and you're thinking, okay, this is what I've been promised and this is what has been delivered. It's literally like two completely different movies. So I'm sure the fact that these characters were cast, these actors were cast in this role, was the draw to bring people into this movie, because even other people that I spoke with at this movie tonight thought this was going to be the love story they never got to see. And the way that it was presented and the way that it was done just doesn't deliver on that. So don't worry, that's not a spoiler, but it's just, if that's what you're coming in expecting, you're going to be disappointed. If you come in expecting this to be a timeline of a lot of different ideas with different families and different aesthetics through these families, and like I said, with the insert of a few of the progressive ideas that just are not necessarily, I mean, there's some points or whatever that fit the times that they're referencing, but there's other ones that are just fluff. That's the best way I can put it. It's just fluff. And not the kind of fluff where you're like, oh, happy, feel good fluff, but it's just like, was that really necessary? And so ultimately on Here, I was really struggling on this one, because just the base part of the story, if I take out the progressive, unnecessary things, and if I overlook the fact of what was promised to us in the trailers and just look at the story by itself, I would probably end up low sevens. But when I have to take into account what they teased us with the trailers and some of the content that was inserted in this, and then just the perspective of the singular camera angle and the perspective of just the idea that this would have been, it just does not feel like a movie. It feels like something that should have been live theater. because of all of that and taking all of that into consideration, with the deputy scale, I am ending up with just a 5 out of 10. I was really struggling. It's like I was leaning towards mid-4s on this one, but there were memorable pieces to this, but there were a lot more flaws than there was meaningful content of sorts. And so I hope that this has helped you at least a little bit. If this is one that you're really wanting to check out, I sincerely urge you to wait until this comes out on digital format versus like paying for the theater tickets and stuff for a story such as this, unless this is the type of story that appeals to you. If you want the ones that feel more like you're watching a live performance instead of a movie, and you are more into the melodramatic type stories over the timelines, and the other stuff really doesn't bother you, yeah, of course, go see it. And you are, I mean, it's a free world. Go and do that. But I honestly think it would be a waste of money. So I hope that this is going to help at least somebody. I'm sure I'm going to upset a lot of people as well. I mean, that's just kind of the thing of why I do what I do. But like I said, if this helps even one person, then I have done my job. And I know based on a lot of the feedback from a lot of my listeners that this will definitely help some people. So if you want the latest and greatest Movie Deputy content, you know which buttons to push. And as always, if you want to be the first to access this content, be sure to go over and subscribe to our YouTube page, because our reviews go live on our YouTube page a couple of hours before they go live on all the podcast formats. And as I've said before, and I will just keep mentioning it again, there will be some changes to that as of the beginning of the new year. So stick around for that. And as always, I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.